Tell me your name.
Leroy J. Sullivan Sr.
And if you could spell it for me, too.
Leroysullivan.
Perfect. That's the hardest question I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, right. That's just until we get started, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got. First of all, do you know where? Give me the history of your family, of where your ancestors came from, as far back as you know.
Well, my mom and my dad both are from the Assumption Parish, the Belrose Bell Alliance area, and I have ancestors in the Thibodeau area, my mom's side, but most of my dad's family were from the Assumption Parish area. My dad and mom got married, moved to Dawsonville, and was lifelong residents of here. I was born and raised in Dawsonville and love it here.
Do you know back further? I know my family comes originally from France. I'm LeBlanc, and then through Nova Scotia. I got kicked out of Nova Scotia and came out here. So you're from Africa, or from the Caribbean nation? Do you have any idea?
Well, I guess Sullivan is sort of an Irish name, huh?
So you're from Ireland?
No, as far back as I know, I haven't researched it back that far. I tried one time and ran into some snares because of the accountability and the history of it. Then so sort of left it alone. But I guess as long as I know who my parents and grandparents were, I was fine with that.
Not much you can do behind that anyway, right?
Right.
Tell me, are there any stories that your grandparents that you can think of how people lived back in their time? Do you remember I'm talking about the pre-electricity stuff, that kind of thing?
Well, unfortunately, all of my grandparents were deceased before I was born, so I never really knew any of my grandparents. But even my parents, they would talk about the times of having to walk to school, walk miles to school, not having shoes to wear, not having electricity, those types of things. And even my dad, he had to quit school in sixth grade in order to start working to help the family to be able to be able to survive. But he wasn't a dummy by a long shot. He was a very smart and intelligent man. Was able to raise 8 kids, and a family. So I'm told the area where we lived that we were the first ones, the first African American family to have a TV. So he did a lot of good things in raising us. As far as the electricity and all, we always tell us stories, and my parents always say, y'all are so fortunate, to be in a position that y'all are, to have things that we didn't have. And I find myself telling my kids that now, things are so much different, even from when I grew up.
What kind of work did your dad do?
My dad, first of all, he worked at a sawmill. Downsville, they used to have a sawmill here in Downsville, and it caught fire, I guess, in the early 60s, 1960s, if I remember correctly. And then he went to work at one of the plant CF industries here in Dawsonville as a laborer, and worked his way up to a boiler maker in the plant, and he worked there until he retired.
What was it like being in Dawsonville as a kid? Give me a kind of a snapshot of a day in the life.
Day in the life in Dawsonville for me was, spending time, playing around with my brothers and sisters or the kids in the neighborhood, sort of a free living style. Not having to worry about anything, people didn't lock their doors or anything back during that time. If the neighbors had, you had. So it was enjoyable. It was really a good life. Look at things now, you're like, boy, we missed out on a lot. But it was more of a close knitness between all of our neighbors, and it was black and white on both sides, and we all got along and all respected each other.
I'm gonna ask you two different, almost the same question, but in two different areas. There was actually really two communities here. There's basically a white community and basically a black community. And for a long time they didn't, and you may be a little bit too young to even, because I'm talking to a lot of really 80, 85-year-old people. Maybe, how much did you experience that, the separation between the two races?
I was, well, I probably was I think I was in 7th grade when they totally integrated the school system. But as far back as I could remember, where we lived, there was always whites on one side and blacks on the other. So I didn't have a real adjustment as far as there being some separation and racism in here. As a kid, I saw a little bit of it, but I wasn't, you know, I didn't have to see a whole lot of it because the times were changing then. But so by the time I was able to get around and being able to go different places, it had subsided some.
Was the black community stronger? Tell me about living in the black community. I already know, and I've talked to people about living in the white community because that's the part that I was more familiar with. But I want to make sure that we represent what it was like. That's what I said. I want to know about when the two were together, but I also want to know separately. What happens in the black community? Because a lot of people in the white community have no idea.
Okay. Well, like I say, I grew up in a house, you know, of, you know, there was 8 children, you know, my mom and my dad, and I would say that we grew up fairly poor. My dad worked, don't get me wrong, and my mom worked, but I would say that the living conditions, as I look back at it now, we were pretty poor, you know, but we did a lot, you know, we had a lot because everybody in the community helped one another. And that's one of the things that we don't have today. You know, like I said, if you had a loaf of bread and the neighbors didn't have, you know, you shared it. Everybody shared things. You know, my dad he raised hogs, so you know. And it got cold, you know. There was always the hog killing, and you kept everything, you know. And it was a day long, you know, cooking and cleaning and affair. But you know, and then there was some time that, you know, that the neighbors came in and helped, and you always gave to the neighbors. So living in the community, we lived off each other, you know. And if one person had, everybody else had. And even with raising the kids, the people in our community, if you were doing something wrong, they were going to correct you, you know, and then they were going to let your parents know what happened. And so you got that chastisement, you know, more than once. So when we walked the streets, whenever we went anywhere, we knew to be respectable because everybody was watching. And that's one of the things that I took pride on in growing up in a small community, a black community, that the people in that community really cared about you and did everything they could to make sure that you stayed on the right path.
Being poor, and I always tell people this the same thing. Did you know you were poor?
No, you know, and it was strange. We lived 2 houses from a housing project, and you know, and I look at it now, like, well, their living conditions were better than ours, you know, but at the time, you know, coming up as a kid, you never really saw it as being poor because, you know, my dad, he worked to make sure that we had the things that we needed. And I remember one thing my dad used to always say, a chicken coop of your own is better than a palace that belongs to someone else. And that have always stuck with me because, you know, as a child, I'm like, okay, well, I'd like to be in a nice, fine house or whatever. But what he was saying is, what we owned was ours, you know, so there was no sleepless nights or whatever, how you going to pay for it or whatever. So in that statement, it meant a lot to me, and they've always stuck with me.
Did y'all used to go out, I mean, did y'all spend any time by the river? Did y'all, in the water bayou, fishing, stuff like that as kids?
No, honestly, we didn't do a lot of that, of fishing or anything. Like I said, my dad had worked a lot. My dad was real strict. You know, you didn't stray way away from home. You know, so we didn't do a lot of those things. It was mostly, you know, sort of routine, you know, working, cutting the grass, you know, feeding the hogs, doing those type of things, you know. So there was not a lot of pleasure time in that. When we did, and we was joking about that earlier today, you know, I remember us, you know, a tire off a car, rolling it down the street, you know, and that was enjoyment doing that. Or you couldn't wait till the China balls came on the tree so you can make your pop gun, you know, those types of things. Or making a cart, you know, a push cart out of old lawnmower wheels and some wood, you know. We did those type of things for fun.
God, you bring back a whole bunch of memories and stuff we used to do too. Except we lived about 100 yards from the Mississippi River, so the river was our, you know, our playground.
Yeah.
If you would. I've got a couple of questions. Tell me about, you kind of started doing, tell me a little bit more about how the closeness of the community, because the community was a lot closer back then. I think
Oh, definitely, yes.
Tell me about it.
You know, and like I said, if you, you know, you had respect for everybody. You know, you walk the street, you know, you pass by anybody, it was good morning, good evening. You know, I remember, you know, going somewhere, you know, and it was dark walking back, you know, you had to say good night, you know. So you always was courteous and respectable to the people in the community, and you knew that if you didn't, that you would be in trouble. You knew that they were watching you. You didn't do anything wrong, you know. My parents could leave us at the house, and, you know, you'd be a little bit mischievous, but you wouldn't do a whole lot because you knew that all the neighbors were watching. And if you did anything out of the ordinary, then, you know, they would know when they got back home. So that made you be on your best behavior, you know, most of the time. And even when you went to school, you know, the school system was so, if you acted up or did anything that was inappropriate, you know, you got at school, and then, you know, it's not one of these things where your parents are going to go to school wanting to fight the teacher or anything like that for, you know, for chastising you. You know, you got it again when you got home. So, you know, and a lot of that is what's missing now. You know, I think that we strayed away from that, and that's what we really need, because, you know, everybody says, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and it's so true, because that's what happened when we were young. Everybody was concerned, you know, everybody had the input to make sure that you would do the right thing. So no matter what block you went into, you know, there was always someone watching you to make sure, you know, and they'll say, you know, well, I know that's Leonard's boy right there, you know, so, you know, you knew to be on your best behavior.
You started talking about school, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Did you know Miss Trudy LeBlanc?
Yes.
Because we interviewed her too.
Okay, yeah.
And what do you tell me about her?
Miss LeBlanc, she was more after, she didn't teach me or anything, but Miss LeBlanc, she was a teacher and rose to the level of being a principal, and, you know, is an excellent person, really a loving and caring person, really quiet, but she had a way of making sure that she kept control.
She's such a nice lady.
Yes.
Yeah, and love Kirk Landry.
Right.
Kind of guys, and just love Kirk.
Right.
Kirk had total respect for her. Tell me some more about school. How it was different than a lot of what you see right now.
Well, like I said, the big difference I see in the school is number one, the discipline and the respectability not being there. When I was going to school, there's no way you would have thought about going to school and being disrespectful to a teacher, principal, or anything like that. That's one of the big challenges that I see. When I was in school, if you did something wrong, then you were chastised. I remember one of my teachers, Miss Clark, and she was an elderly lady at the time, and I acted up in her class one day, and she decided she was going to, you know, paddle I seen in the hand. You know, she had this big, thick paddle, and she was trying to bend my hand back, and she was shaking so much. I'm like, this old lady, there's nothing she can do that's going to hurt me. And she hit me once in the palm of my hand with that paddle, you know, and that was it. You know, you don't have to worry about me acting up in your class anymore. And that was, you know, it was things like that. And I also remember, and this lady, she's a school board representative now, Miss Catherine Davis. She taught Black history. And I never forget, she gave me a book to read, and I had months in order to do this book report. And it was on prejudice in the U.S. And I waited till the night before to try to do it. And it was a bunch of little short stories. And what I did was I decided I'm going to read the beginning and the end and make up everything in the middle. Well, that didn't go over, and I got up in front of the class, gave my report, and she didn't say anything while I was giving the report. And when I finished, she, in a real quiet voice, said, you know, young people, there's no way I would give you a book to read that I hadn't read myself. And I knew I had messed up. And she was the type of person, she would walk in the class, she would slap upside the head or whatever, you know, you're not, you know, she'd tell you, you're not going to act a fool in my class. You know, she did it in not, I'm not going to say a playful way because she got everybody's respect, but, you know that if you did wrong in Miss Davis' class, that she was coming, you know, and the wood floors, and you'd hear her walking, coming down like, oh, Lord. Well, this time she didn't do that. And she just calmly talked about it and how she was disappointed in me. That she said, I never thought you would have done something like that. And that hurt me so bad, and I've always stuck with me. You know, so it was better than her. If she'd have came and knocked me upside the head or done her little normal routine, I'd been, oh, yeah, okay. But that stuck with me, that I knew then that if I was given an assignment, I always had to put my best foot forward because, you know, it was the best thing for me, number one. But also there was a lot of people that had a lot of high hopes for me, that knew that I had of the capabilities I had. So, you know, it meant a lot, you know. And nowadays, will that happen? I'm not sure, you know. And I think that a lot of that personal touch is gone, and it's not because the teachers don't want to give it. It's just you don't know what your limitations are, because sometimes, you know, you can say something, and then next thing you know, the parents are there, or somebody wanting to sue you, or something like that. And I think until we get to the point where, okay, my child is in your care, and I know that you're going to do what's best for my child, and I'm going to back you 100%, I think we're going to continue to have problems.
I am doing an educational documentary all over the country, talking to people in LA, New York, DC. And that's exactly the biggest, the disconnect between the parents and the kids and the teacher. That triangle has to work all the way around.
Right.
And the community, like you said. It's really simple, it's just hard to do.
Yeah. When I was coming up, there's no way I would do anything when my dad had to go to school, because number one, he was going to have to miss a day of work, and that wasn't going to be good. And number two, he wasn't going to take my word over a teacher. There's nothing I could tell him that he was going to listen to, because he'd be like, there's no way this teacher's going to lie on you, son. You know, so I never did anything bad when my dad was going to have to come to school, because I know it wasn't going to be good for me at all.
That's funny. You went to college?
No, sir.
You went to high school and then what?
Yeah. After high school, I was offered a scholarship to Southern University in engineering, but I decided I'd had enough of school, and I ended up starting work at CF Industries as a chemical operator, and worked my way up to shift supervisor, and worked there until 2000.
What do you like about Donnaville?
The main thing I love about Dawsonville is the fact that, number one, it's home. It's a place that's quiet, and even with all of the things that everybody have to deal with drugs and other crimes, but still it's a close-knit society. It's a community where you can walk the streets and you know, get a greeting, you know, from the person passing by. It's a place that has a lot of potential. You know, I see Dawsonville growing and getting back to a point where, you know, back in the history when they start talking about, you know, having, you know, the bus station, you know, a hotel here, and all of the things that Dawsonville once had. I see that cycle coming back around. You know, if if we just continue to work together. I see Dawsonville as a gold mine, per se, a place where it's just waiting for someone to come there and do all of the chipping and knocking away all of the rough spots so that you can really have that treasure. So that's what I love about Dawsonville. It's a peaceful place. It's a good community with loving people. And, you know, every community you live in is going to have their problems. The smaller the community, the more problems where you may have as far as when people start talking about racism or other things. But I see Dawsonville as a community, although we have those things, we still are a lot better than a lot of communities.
From what I understand, you're a pretty popular mayor.
Thank you.
That's, in case you hadn't heard, that's the word on the street.
Okay.
In fact, one of the word on the street was, I don't know if anybody would be able to beat him.
Well, good.
Which says something.
Yeah.
What does the airport thing look like? Do you think that I don't want to say is that of any consequence, but tell me about, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, recently, I asked the city council, we formed a cargo airport task force in order to, number one, to educate the people in the community, promote the airport. I think that the cargo airport will be good for not just our community, but the state as a whole. I think that the cargo airport will become a reality. It's a little frustrating to understand, I guess, when you start looking at it from a state level as to why people haven't jumped on board with something that can create so many jobs. You know, and the good thing about it is it would give the people in this community who have children like myself that are growing up to be able to graduate from high school, go to college, and then stay home and get a good job, a good paying job. So I think that the airport will do great things for the city of Donnaville and the surrounding areas. I'm for it 100%. Because I think that is what we need, especially when you visit the Alliance Airport in Dallas-Fort Worth, and you see you know, what it did for that community, you know, and in a 15-year period, one school district getting well, I think it was like $192 million in taxes just from Alliance. You know, look at what we can do with our school system. The school system, I understand, went from being one of the worst to the very best. You know, and we can do the same thing here. You know, being a small community and not having a lot of tax base, you know, is always a struggle. You know, we have roads and stuff that need improvement. You know, but if the airport comes, you'll be able to do a lot more things because, and you know, it's not going to be inside the city limits, but then the parish will have more money, and they'll be able to do more things in order to help us. So it'll be just a trickle-down effect, and the people in this community will benefit from it.
Revitalizing of downtown Railroad Avenue. Talk about that.
You know, the revitalization of the downtown area was something when I became mayor, I was, I guess, a little bit naive to the fact, you know, you look at a building and say, oh, it's just an old building, why not tear it down? Until some people from the state, and we did a walkthrough, and they started telling you about the age of the buildings, you know, when they were built. They could tell you all this history about a building just by looking at it. And I had a different outlook on it. And so we have a master plan that's 99% completed. And it's probably the fifth or sixth master plan. You know, we probably have the record for having master plans. But the good thing about this master plan is we've already started putting things into action to start revitalizing the downtown area, to try to